the lands of Bretland, where the white cliffs stand guard against the cold sea, in the seasons that are very wet, the men of the islands sit by their great log fires, and they tell a tale. And those tales they tell are the stories of a kind and wise king and his people. They are the sagas of Grimnir the Grim.
Hey, Ersklinger. Today we're going to take a look at my father's sword from Nordic Skalds. They got in touch, wanted me to review this for them, and sent it to me, so I got this for free. There you go, full disclosure and all that jazz. Yeah, so the process for getting something reviewed by me, probably worth quickly going over again. I was getting flooded with too much stuff and feeling bad that I couldn't review things that people were sending me on PDF. So I now require that you send me a hard copy to fill my increasingly stuffed house with books. 2 reasons. One, it shows a level of commitment from the people doing it. And 2, a book gets to sit there glaring at me until I review it. So you're far more likely to get reviewed in a timely fashion if you send me a hard copy. I do not do reviews for pay. I don't foresee any situation other than a desperate one in which I do accept pay for reviews. And if you send me anything, you're going to get an honest review to the best of my capabilities. So be warned. And then maybe check into who I am, what I like, what I do before you send me anything. But I will always try to put some kind of positive or advisory spin on it. Alright, so what do we have here? A very thin book, mercifully short. On the back cover, it declares itself as being cliche, hilarious, and easy, and that you can relive your childhood adventures with this epic parody role-playing game. So let's see about that, shall we? Alright. It is full colour throughout, this booklet, and pretty much full art on most of the pages, with the text layered over the art. Characters, and we go straight into that, pretty much are defined by their name, their age, their appearance, their gear, their personality, and more mechanically, their background, their culture, and heroic feature, something that's particularly special or good about them, a weakness, a principle that's a kind of two-edged sword. If you're acting in alignment with your principles, you might get a bonus, but your principles can also cause you trouble. Significant places that you have visited, significant events in your life, significant people, and an arch nemesis of some kind. And it's suggested if you're playing a group game that you choose a collective nemesis that can come up in a one-shot or whatever. So these are all defined with words, basically, and most of them give you a bonus or a penalty of plus or minus 2. So it's a bit like Fate characters, but a bit more defined in terms of what each trait might be. On top of that, you have skills, which range from 1 to 8. Literally, like you've got 1 skill at 1, 1 skill at 2, 1 skill at 3, and so on. The skills are very set. You have physical activity, social interaction, knowledge, spiritual power, perception, combat, magic, and secrecy. To make a roll for something, you take your skill, add or take away any appropriate modifiers from traits or situation and so on, and then try to roll under that on an 8-sided die, like so. A 1 is a crit, an 8 is a botch. So that is very, very swingy. But almost everything in this comes down to a single roll. So like combat isn't going to be a whole bunch of rolls, crits and botches. It's going to be a single roll. And the game angles itself as being comedy game, kind of an amusing game at least, and great success, or more often great failure, is very definitely a part of comedy, something that can make games more humorous just by nature of things going wildly wrong or wildly well. There is a narrative buy-in mechanic called cliche points. So that when you play into a particular trope or cliche in play, something that most people around the table will recognize, you get cliche points, and you can then spend those to alter the world in some way, to perform near impossible deeds, to gain magical items, and so on. Even combat comes down to a single roll, taking into account everything for every character and having everyone roll, including the baddie, and then using margin of success to determine who is the winner at the end of that. In some ways this is similar to my own description system, or the way things work in Irrepressible, where it all comes down to a single check or roll. Personally, I'd house rule this a little bit, so that failure the first time is a setback or an injury. You could easily give injuries a description like bump on the noggin and a penalty associated with them. And then I would go on to have a second roll where you can choose to fight on against the odds, retreat, surrender, escape, whatever. But that's not the rules as written here. There's not much guidance on group combat, which strikes me as a bit of a glaring absence in this. One of the only real absences, and it's not that difficult to figure out. It's just the examples and so on all seem to be for single combat or one person being outnumbered. Magic is entirely made of hand-wavium, so it's up to you to keep it under control at the table. You get a few basic GM tips, campaign play, but we can safely assume that anyone buying this is going to know what a role-playing game is. So this thing is kinda neat. Short, mercifully short, in a world of 300-page hardbacks and indie games that should be as short as this, but cannot help but include a bunch of pretentious essays and weird meta mechanics and explanations of needlessly esoteric terminology and justifications and explanations of things that should be readily apparent in play. I mean, you get none of that here. So simple, accessible, great. This thing is built for one-shots and could easily be translated over to other genres and even taken seriously if you perhaps modify the crit/fail rules a little bit. It sits somewhere between Fate and Fate Accelerated in terms of complexity, or somewhere between Fate and the description system in terms of complexity. It would be a great system for solo play, for picaresques and penny dreadfuls in particular, but again, you could play it more seriously for whatever it is that you fancy doing, because most of the actual mechanics take place on the meta level, the narrative level, rather than the hard and fast mechanics of a lot of games. I have two main gripes and one minor gripe. Main gripes: one, the full color printing muddies everything. I don't know if it comes up on the camera, things often don't, but whatever printer and print process the Lithuanian printers used, the color is not especially vibrant. It's not enough contrast, difference between light and dark, and it blends together, becoming quite mushy, which is something I'm not fond of in a lot of full color RPGs. It may be beyond the scope of the creators to do anything about that, but it is disappointing nonetheless. Printing the text, albeit short text for the most part, on art backgrounds makes it harder to read than it needs to be for much of the book. With much of the text being short, you could have increased the point size, or made it bold or bolder, and medium or whatever, and made it therefore much more readable without losing much more of the art behind it. You know, since the printing press, or since before the printing press, people have used dark text on a plain or mostly plain background for a reason, chaps. So maybe if you do another version, consider that. The minor gripe, I'm presuming that this is translated from Borg, or written with English as a second language. Now, it's perfectly readable and understandable, so I'm not going to knock you too much for that. I know no Swedish, but it's just a little awkward here and there, and could have done with another going over by a fluent English speaker, preferably one with a bit of a humour background, to help set the right tone and naturalise the language a bit. I'm not going to haul any indie publisher up too much on that kind of thing, though, because money's tight. So I understand. But if I was to have another minor gripe, it would be that. This was a Kickstarter from December last year, finished. Not one that I backed. You can get the PDF on drive-thru for $7.99 dollary dues. Not sure when, where, if print will generally be available, but probably at some point. All things considered, then, in its current state and everything, I would give it a low 4 for style and a middling 3 for substance, which is 7 out of 10 or 3.5 out of 5. Though I would remind you yet again that I use the full span of scores from 1 to 5. So that is an above average score. If you're looking for a quick, easy and adaptable game for solo play, one-shots, filler, or something to play while doing shots of aquavit, other brands are available. You could do a lot worse than this and not much better. Now, the low score for substance it's just the nature of the beast, really. They could have included some more examples and ideas and other bits and pieces. That's all it would have taken to put it up a bit. But as a short, quick, somewhat silly game, you don't need or expect a lot of substance necessarily. So in full context, that would push the score to an 8 out of 10 or a 4 out of 5. So yeah, worth it. I like it. It made me smile. Zang. There's a magical time on the cusp of true adolescence where you're no longer quite a child and not yet an adult. A time where the confidence of the teenager and the wonder of the child combine in a surge of optimism, hope and imagination to make some of the most important moments of our lives. There's a rich vein of films that tap into this time. These are the films where the kids save the world, find something fantastical, or solve a problem that the adults can't or wouldn't even believe existed. Some of these are fantastical, some are not. Some are a loving homage to the older versions of the same sorts of stories. If you like The Goonies, Super 8, The Monster Squad, or Explorers, this is a game for you and your kids. Available at post-mort.com and drive-thru RPG.